I'm going to start with directing this to Pierre, but with how complex energy systems are, how do we avoid getting too focused on either the forest or the trees? How can we balance both?
That's a good question. I wish I would have an answer. When I actually I had a question for Evan, like you can only model what you know, right? So this is sometimes I think the challenge. Like we're we need to know all these trees to understand the forest, right? But the trees often stand in our way to actually see the bigger picture, right? So, and I think this is I think the biggest part of this is actually to work in an interdisciplinary team, right? A team that captures many different aspects of this and have these communication between the different experts of, levels of expertise, which is not easy because all of these engineers speak a somewhat different language than economists, and economists speak a little bit of a different language than, say, environmentalists, right? So it's like everybody has their own little thing and we need to understand each other better. And I think that we're working on this, but there's still a lot of ground that needs to be covered. And I mean, Jessica brought in a very important perspective, like also we coming with our own cultural background and thinking, right? Which often limits us in our understanding of how the world functions. So long story short, I think, when it comes to the forest of the trees, we need a lot of people to walk around and identify all these trees for us to actually capture the bigger picture, right? And so this whole lecture series, maybe that's one of the reasons why we're having it. So we want people to be able to engage in these discussions from different perspectives, not just from, I know how to design a power plant, but also like, how does it affect many, many other areas?
Great, thank you, Pierre. And I'm wondering, related to that, Jessica, you've worked in the oil sands industry and in different parts of the industry. How have you seen this balanced, and what are your perspective on being able to communicate with different expertise in different groups?
100%, just to build off what Pierre was saying, that when it comes to engineering design and engineering projects and engineering operations and maintenance and reclamation, it is important to have in those beginning stages at the planning table, at the risk assessment stage, a lot of diverse perspectives and people able to navigate and represent the voices who aren't at the table. So expertise around the environmental impact, the ecosystem impact, in the case of the oil sands that border on a lot of First Nations and Métis Nations up there, making sure to have that Indigenous voice at the table, thinking through having the technologists and the operators, the mine folk, as well as the upstream folks at the table as well. I know we can't have everybody, of course, at a table. Decision making would become impossible, but making sure that you have people with multiple perspectives and have a thorough review process as part of that. And so really, really being able to communicate with each other and think about who can wear multiple hats at that table when you're making your plans and doing your risk assessments and doing all that planning.
Thank you, Jessica. Does anyone want to follow up on that, or I have I guess, go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, I was just going to say, your question about forest and trees is a good one. The approach you want to take often depends on what the question is. And so there is no one solution to all our problems, right? We need to apply the right tools. So whether those are simulation models or economic analyses or stakeholder interviews or whatever, there are many different approaches we can apply. But there is a generic approach that we can use for dealing with these kinds of really complex problems, and it's called the systems approach. And so it does actually give you a set of sort of generic steps that you should follow for dealing with any of these really complicated problems. And one of the first things it asks you to do is define the problem, because that's actually a great deal more complicated than you think it is. And so, that's where stakeholders can help, because they can help you to figure out what the actual problem is. And then the next thing you try to figure out is what the boundaries are. What do I care about and what do I exclude? And you can see with something like climate change, historically, we've excluded a whole lot. And so when we talk about climate change now, what we're trying to do is internalize the climate problem within our decision making so that we draw our boundaries a little bit broader.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really good point. And the systems can become very big and seem very overwhelming, especially when we think about climate change. And then there's also things we can do, like Andrew showed us, of closer to home and ways that you can have your own energy system or that more people can get involved. I wonder, Andrew, what you think about the role of individuals in this could be, or what you could say from that perspective.
Yeah, I think there's a mix here. There's things like problems like climate change or other societal problems are not going to be solved by just individuals, and they're not going to be solved by volunteerism. Both of these things contribute to it, but they're not going to get the job done alone. So take even my little energy system. What did I need in order to make that work? I needed an Alberta government policy that said I was allowed to do it. I needed a municipal utility that was willing to hook me up. I needed there to be installers who were available, who had enough business to make a viable business installing solar power in the community. And I needed my neighbors not to plant trees in the way of my garage. So there's local things, there's policy things, et cetera, that all tie together. And there was a great article in the New York Times this week, or a week ago, about a group that had put a $30,000 solar system on their roof, and their local utility wouldn't hook them up because there's too much solar already in the area. And I know Peter Mrsilik, who's, I think I saw him on the call earlier, has done some similar work for Edmonton. And so we're going to be in a situation where you live might determine whether you get a permit to do this little thing that I did, or whether you can get an electric vehicle or those sorts of things. So individual stuff works, but you can't, I'm not going to be able to string a new power line to my house to make my solar system work, or put in a new transformer or anything without broader collaboration.